Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we are going to gently but very clearly break down the crucial benchmarks for recognizing depression and, more importantly, knowing exactly when it is time to step up and see a doctor. Mental health can often feel like this foggy, confusing landscape, right? Both for the people who are suffering and for the folks who love them. Well, today we're going to clear that fog. We'll be looking closely at concrete signs, timelines, and specific behaviors straight from psychiatric practice to help you understand precisely what depression looks like out there in the real world.
To kick off our journey, I want you to really look at this number, 10. It is absolutely vital to know that 1 in 10 people will experience a depressive episode at some point in their lives. Think about that for a second. If you look around a crowded room, your typical workplace, or even your extended family, the statistical reality is that someone right there has faced or will face this exact challenge. This makes depression a highly common illness, not some rare anomaly. Yet, despite how incredibly common it is, people constantly delay getting help, which can worsen the condition and, tragically, even lead to fatal outcomes. So our goal today is to equip you with the knowledge to stop that delay in its tracks.
So here is our roadmap for today. We'll cover the causes of depression, dangerous symptoms to watch, the 3 major delusions, unique signs in children, distinguishing bipolar disorder, and finally, family understanding and consultation. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Causes of depression. Before we can even begin to identify the symptoms, we really need to understand what actually causes depression to develop in the very first place. The onset of depression is typically triggered by a combination of 2 interacting elements. On one side, we have genetic factors, and on the other, the heavy weight of psychological stress. It's not just one or the other, they interact. If someone has a high genetic vulnerability, well, it might only take a tiny amount of environmental stress to trigger an episode. Conversely, even someone with very low genetic vulnerability can absolutely develop depression if the psychological stress they endure is overwhelmingly high. Bottom line, anyone can develop this illness if the overlapping conditions are just right.
Looking at a typical timeline here, a major depressive episode generally lasts anywhere from 3 to 6 months, though, it can certainly drag on much longer. Now, the absolute crucial point here is right in the middle, medication intervention. Using psychiatric medication helps to significantly shorten this painful duration and, super importantly, prevents relapse, which is incredibly common with this illness. Plus, just because the initial severe depression lifts, it doesn't mean the person can instantly just jump right back into their normal life. A dedicated rehabilitation period is almost always required before they can return to work or standard daily activities.
Section 2. Dangerous symptoms to watch. Okay, these visible symptoms act as crystal clear warning signs that a psychiatric visit isn't just recommended, it's deeply needed. Psychological symptoms are normally the first thing we notice, right? But they can be so easily written off as just being in a bad mood. Clinical depression, though, goes so much deeper. It ranges from a persistent loss of joy and a total inability to focus to intense self-guilt and drastically decreased self-esteem. A particularly fascinating and honestly dangerous manifestation here is extreme pessimism. A severely depressed person might genuinely vocalize absolute despair, saying things like the country will sink or humanity is entirely doomed. When a person's worldview becomes completely engulfed in this kind of apocalyptic pessimism, that is a massive red flag. We also really have to look closely at physical and behavioral symptoms. You want to pay close attention to someone's daily routines. Are they suddenly unable to eat 3 meals a day? Are they dealing with severe insomnia? Or, and this is very common with depression, waking up incredibly early in the morning and just being entirely unable to go back to sleep. Behaviorally, a person might drastically stop talking, like their word count just plummets compared to their normal self. And, absolutely most critically, if you notice them looking up suicide websites or making plans for self-harm, immediate intervention is completely non-negotiable. Let's also look at environmental triggers. If we're searching for a really concrete metric for environmental stress that can lead straight into depression, we have to look at workload. Exceeding 100 hours of overtime in a single month crosses what is starkly referred to as the overwork death line or the Kuroshi line. If you or someone you know is hitting this kind of brutal, punishing work schedule and showing the symptoms we just discussed, the situation is critical. The environment itself is literally poisoning their mental health. Section 3, the 3 major delusions. This brings us to a really fascinating but frankly terrifying area of the illness. What makes these delusions so insidious is that the patients themselves often have zero realization that they're experiencing a delusion at all. To them, these thoughts are absolute reality. The first of these is the hypochondriacal delusion. Now, this isn't just worrying about a cough. In this state, the person is absolutely convinced they have a hidden severe physical illness like terminal cancer. Even after visiting multiple doctors and getting completely clear medical tests back, they will believe that the doctors and their own family are simply hiding the grim truth from them. They literally cannot be reasoned out of this belief.
The second is the delusion of guilt. This is characterized by an overwhelming, crushing belief that one is simply the worst human being alive. This often manifests in obsessing over incredibly minor past transgressions. I mean, imagine a grown adult crying uncontrollably in the middle of the night, entirely consumed by guilt over a minor childhood incident, like shoplifting a candy bar decades ago.
The third is the delusion of poverty. Here, a person is utterly terrified and constantly checking their wallet, their bank accounts, or going to the ATM over and over again. They are completely convinced they've run out of money and are totally destitute, even if, in reality, they have plenty of funds to live on. The brain's fear centers are just misfiring, projecting a reality of starvation and ruin that simply does not exist.
Section 4. Unique signs in children. So, depression certainly doesn't just affect adults. Because children often don't have the vocabulary to express their internal despair, their emotional distress bypasses language and manifests directly in physical behaviors. You might see self-harm, which can look like compulsive hair pulling or cutting their wrists or thighs. You might also see the sudden onset of eating disorders, like a cycle of binge eating and vomiting. Academically and socially, a sudden, drastic drop in grades, an inability to focus in class, or outright school refusal are massive indicators that a child is buckling under unseen mental weight and needs a doctor's evaluation, definitely not punishment.
And returning briefly to adult behaviors, we have a major trap to look out for: alcohol masking. When adults begin using increased alcohol consumption to force themselves to sleep or simply to mask their emotional pain during the evening hours, it is highly, highly dangerous. Drinking to numb the symptoms is a massive warning sign that the depression has reached a level requiring immediate professional medical intervention. It is not a coping mechanism. It is a siren sounding the alarm.
Section 5. Distinguishing bipolar disorder.
When you do finally make it to the clinic and consult a doctor, there is one crucial diagnostic distinction that absolutely must be made to ensure safe treatment. We have to understand the difference in treatment paths between depression and bipolar disorder. While both conditions involve severe depressive lows, they are fundamentally different beasts. Depression generally responds really well to standard antidepressants. However, it is vital for the patient and their family to report any past periods of extreme, unusual energy that lasted for weeks. Why? Because giving standard antidepressants to someone who actually has bipolar disorder can act like pouring gasoline on a fire, triggering severe, totally uncontrollable manic episodes. If a manic episode is accidentally triggered by the wrong medication, the social consequences can be absolutely devastating. During these medication-induced manic states, a person might become highly aggressive, leading to super out-of-character fights. They might engage in reckless, extreme overspending. The source material even notes instances where individuals in a manic state have impulsively gone out and bought an apartment or a condo without a single thought to the financial reality. This really highlights why getting the correct initial diagnosis by checking for past energetic episodes is so absolutely essential.
Section 6. Family understanding and consultation.
Okay, this covers perhaps the absolute most important factor in a patient actually seeking and maintaining treatment: the supportive role of the family. The idea that, oh, it's just laziness is quite literally one of the most dangerous barriers in mental health today. If a family dismisses these severe, life-threatening symptoms as mere laziness, or if they actively oppose the idea of psychiatric care, the patient is completely trapped. A highly vulnerable child, a stressed college student, or even a deeply exhausted adult will likely never make it to the clinic if the people closest to them tell them their illness isn't even real.
We seriously need to reframe how we see this. As the medical source material strongly emphasizes, depression is triggered by overlapping factors like we talked about, genetics and stress. It is not a moral failing. Actually, scratch that. It is just a completely standard, normal medical illness. Just as you wouldn't ever tell someone with a broken leg that they are being lazy for not running a marathon, depression requires normal, stigma-free medical care and compassion. I'm going to leave you with this final, vital thought. When you see these benchmarks, the sudden silence, the terrifying delusions, the sleepless nights, in someone you love, will you dismiss them? Or, armed with this understanding, are you prepared to recognize it as a cry for help and support them in getting the medical care they truly need? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this knowledge empowers you to look out for yourselves and each other. See you next time.